1, 0.
Welcome all to a brand new episode of Monday Night Nerd LIVE Live. I hope you are doing well. My name is Corp Cosplay. If you've never seen the show before, I'm a cosplayer in the Southern Ontario area. I've been going to conventions for over 15 years. I'm a cosplayer. I'm this, that. I'm a nerd. And this is my podcast. We talk about nerdy things like cosplay. We talk about movies. We talk about music. We talk about everything else under the sun. But tonight we're talking on the world of pro wrestling because I'm a big wrestling fan. And we're going to do a fun comparison. We're going to compare wrestling to marketing, because if you don't know, I have a background in marketing. I work in the world of marketing on a daily basis in my daily job, and we're going to talk about how wrestling is super similar to the world of professional wrestling, and marketing are very similar, and we're going to talk about that and a whole lot more. Folks on TikTok, if you were just tuning in, hey, hope you're doing well. If you guys want to talk about wrestling and marketing, you guys should hop over to my YouTube channel, Corp Cosplay, and we are going to start the show right now. We're going to start things off with a little bit of newsy news. Actually, before we get into newsy news, if you're looking at me and you've ever watched the podcast before, you're probably like, this guy is looking pretty sweaty and pretty gross right now. Yeah, a little bit. Sorry. I am in the warmest room of the house. This is my setup, and we have no air conditioning in this room. So during the summer, it is boiling hot in here. And if you're not in the Southern Ontario area, right now, it is BS degrees outside. It absolutely sucks. But I'm still here, and I still want to do the show. So we're just going to have to deal with it for a little while. Comes with the territory. But anyways, let's jump into the newsy news, folks. Let's jump into, if you are a PlayStation fan, there are some games out on the PlayStation Network right now. And lately, because it has been so warm outside, I've not really wanted to do much. So we are working on a video game right now. And the video game I've been working on and playing through and have completed is Alone in the Dark. I have never played the Alone in the Dark series. There is a famous story back in the day with some of my buddies that I embarrassed one of my friends in grade school, about the game Alone in the Dark. I will go into that story on another show. Don't have time for it tonight. But they have released an upgraded version of the original Alone in the Dark game on the PS Network, and it is free right now. And I thought, let's give it a shot. I am a big Resident Evil fan, so I was excited to try this game out. I had heard many great things about the Alone in the Dark series, and I gotta say, now that it is completed, it is actually a super fun game. I had a lot of fun playing this game. It feels very Resident Evil, and I actually texted a buddy of mine, and I said, hey, this is really Resident Evil style. You should play this. And I didn't realize at the time that this was a direct remake of the original. And if you don't know, the Resident Evil series took inspiration from the original Alone in the Dark series. So makes sense why Resident Evil it felt like. And it was really fun. It's got David Harbour, who you may know from Thunderbolts and Stranger Things, as one of the main characters. His likeness and everything is in it. You could play as him. You could play as another different character. And you go through this building. I believe her uncle is here for psychiatric help or something. And it dovetails into all these crazy things, all these crazy creatures you have to kill. And it was really fun. It was really short, though, which is fine, because when I think of the original game, it came out in like 1992, so not having a very long runtime is not something that really bothers me. But I had a lot of fun doing it, and I had a lot of fun. So if you are a fan of the Resident Evil series, don't sleep on Alone in the Dark. It's free on the PlayStation Plus right now. Go download it and actually give it a shot. It is actually a very, very fun game. It's very, backtracking. There's a door locked. You got to get a key from a little further down, and then you got to backtrack to this, and then you got to pick up this, and all these things combine into something. It's that type of game. So if you like that style of gameplay, you will like this Alone in the Dark game. I had a lot of fun playing it, and I'm probably going to jump into Resident Evil 5 next, because I've not fully completed Resident Evil 5, and I just picked it up a few weeks ago. So that'll be the next game I'm working on, and we'll talk about it once I'm actually done it. Also, I'm going to lose my nerd card, my Disney card. I don't care what anyone says, but I saw something this weekend, and you're probably looking at me going, oh my God, you're a nerd, you're a geek. How have you never seen this? I saw How to Train Your Dragon for the first time. I've never seen How to Train Your Dragon. And my wife is a giant fan of it. And she said, well, the remake or the live action version is in theaters. You should go see it. And I said, you know what? That would be a great idea. It would be a great night out for the two of us. So a couple nights ago, we went to the local cinema and we saw How to Train Your Dragon. And this is really funny because this is not just a normal experience. It is an experience where we saw it in Screen X. If you don't know what Screen X is the extended 720-degree screen. So you don't just have the screen in the middle. There are projectors on either side that shoot the movie on the side walls as well. So we paid a little extra money to see this style. We've done the D-Box seats, we've done the 3DX and all the elements and stuff on us and stuff like that. I don't personally like that. I don't have a bad back, but I've got a little bit of a banged up back. So in a chair bouncing around for 2 hours, it's not the most enjoyable experience for me, especially for the movies that we've seen. We saw The Force Awakens the first time in the motion seats, the D-Box seats, and it was okay for the flying scenes, but there were certain scenes, and I clearly remember this one, it bugged the crap out of me. Han Solo tilts his head at one point, and our seats did this, like to tilt with him, and I'm like, no. This is stupid. Keep your seats straight, normal, until we start doing fun stuff. And then we saw Across the Spider-Verse in the in the 3DX with like the water spraying on us and the moving seats and the wind and all that. That was too much, in my opinion. It really distracted from the movie because it was so intense, like swinging with the webs and stuff. It was just way too much. So we thought this might be an okay movie to see in a 3DX version, but just in case, we thought this Screen X idea was way better. And to be honest, it wasn't half bad. It was actually a fun experience for that movie. I could see it being a waste for a lot of other movies. Most of the movie is going to be in this main screen as it normally would be. They've just kind of extended it to the sides. Now, when it came to our seats, we were farther up to the back, but we were off to the left by about 4 seats. That does impact the side screens a bit because if you're too far to one side, it's like looking at a computer monitor if it's right here and you're looking at it like on a weird angle. It looks very stretched. So that looked weird, but the other side looked really clean. So I think it really depends on where you sit. You kind of have to sit dead center in the line or just maybe a seat on either side because if you go too far to one side or another, it's going to look blurry. Overall, though, I really liked How to Train Your Dragon, and I know people are probably like, you've never seen this movie. There's 3 of them. How have you never seen it? It just missed me. It just missed my viewing. I know a couple people who saw it back in the day, and they all loved it, and I just slept on it. I slept on it, was like, that's cool. It's just not something I'm really dying to see. I really liked it, and I really liked the live-action version. I still have not seen the animated version. I did talk to my wife after. I said, what are the differences between the animated one and this one? And she said, honestly, they added maybe 5% to the movie, and I said, that's interesting because the common thing with these new live-action movies is that they add a whole bunch of extra stuff to it, and it feels bloated. And you can kind of feel the parts where you're like, I could have trimmed out those 20 minutes. And you're like, oh, well, that's the extra stuff they added to make it a new movie. I didn't feel any of that in this movie. I felt like all the scenes made sense. There was good impact on the emotional parts throughout it. And I had a really good time. I really did. And I'm actually really excited to see the animated version. So as someone who has not seen the animated version, and I completely understand that animation, you could do a 10,000 times better version with emotions, especially with Toothless and stuff like that. It's still a good time. It's honestly Honestly, it is the best live action movie that I've seen from Disney Pixar style in that new realm of remaking movies that they shouldn't. I've seen a bunch of them, and this was probably the best one. So if you're a How to Train Your Dragon fan, or if you've not seen How to Train Your Dragon, you should go see this in theaters. It's really good. It's a fun time. We got a whole bunch of free tickets from past Christmases and stuff, so we didn't have to pay, thankfully. But even if we did have to pay, you should go check it out. It is actually a really fun time. Kids will enjoy it. Adults will enjoy it. Go check it out. The only other thing I want to talk about tonight before we get into the main event, and I'm not a big fan of bringing up things that are negative, and I'm not I like keeping the show very positive. I'm the type of person that if it's something negative, the best way to kill it, to make sure no one else is going to hear about it, is to shut up about it. However, this is something I feel like I want to talk about because I am such a fan of the franchise, and I'm so not a fan of the person who's now going to be in charge of the franchise. It was reported today that Adi Shankar, the producer of Castlevania, Devil May Cry on Netflix, he's also the producer on Dread. He's had a couple other film credits. He has now taken over the rights of Duke Nukem, and he is saying he is going to make his version of a Duke Nukem game over the next couple years. Now, why do I care about this? I'm a big Duke Nukem fan. I loved Duke Nukem 64. I've played it on almost every re-release that's ever come out. It is a really, really fun game. I actually didn't mind Duke Nukem Forever. I thought it was actually fun and corny, but still fun. I have met the voice actor, and he is such an amazing guy who does the voice of Duke Nukem. So nice. And I hate Adi Shankar. I cannot stand this guy. There was a show on YouTube back in the day that was sort of like they'd get like 4 or 5 people. I cannot remember the name of the show, but they'd get like 4 or 5 movie buffs together, and they'd throw out different ideas of like, if you could have these 2 characters fight, who would win and stuff like that. Weird, fun questions like that. And I remember Adi Shankar being on there, and he was the most stuck up prick-looking guy and just acted like he knew better than everyone else and acted so whiny. And every time I've seen interviews with him and stuff like that, he just seems arrogant. And I just feel like this is going to turn into him wanting to go back to Duke Nukem. He's a bro, and he just wants women, and he's got big guns in America, and all that. And I just feel like Duke Nukem Forever, even if it was a great game, kind of showed that we're kind of past that world of video games. Like, you can still have that to a point, but I feel like you kind of have to make fun of it at this point. Like, I feel like Duke Nukem is going the way of Leisure Suite Larry, if you know that series of games, which I find hilarious in an ironic, fun way. But trying to make a serious Duke Nukem game nowadays, I just feel like it's going to fall on deaf ears and no one's really going to care because that generation of gaming is so dead at this point. There are so many better first-person shooters out there that have taken that way of playing and made it their own and made it better. So just hearing that of all the people, he's going to take over that franchise, I'm so thumping my head against the wall that I wish it could be anybody but him. But again, I don't like bringing up negative stuff, but just being such a big fan of that franchise, I'm just like, of all the people, why? Like, give it to PlayStation or give it to Microsoft or somebody. But of him, I just feel like it's just going to be an arrogant, everyone should like Duke now. It's like, oh, shut up. No one cares. But that's all for the news. We're going to jump into the main event in a little bit. If you're still tuning in here on YouTube, if you're tuning in on TikTok, you should hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and all those things. We are doing this every single Monday night. We have a whole bunch of stuff coming up. We've got a Comic-Con review coming up next weekend. I will be at Nickel City Comic-Con this weekend in Buffalo, New York. I'm going to be working with the celebrities, as I do with most conventions, and we're going to talk about that next week, so you should make sure to subscribe and all those things so you can make sure that you are here next Monday when we talk about that. If you're on TikTok, you should follow me on this page because I'm going to be going LIVE live with almost all of these Monday Night Nerds. But if you want to ask a question or you have things to talk about the topic I'm talking about, hop over to YouTube, Corp Cosplay, and you can join the conversation like these people, like my buddy Lark Bark, who is in chat. Everything is going good, sir. We are sweating our butts off here in Ontario. That is what's going on. That is why I am already glistening after only 15 minutes here on the show. But I'm so glad you guys could stick around and hang out with me here on the podcast. And as you may know, if you've been on the show before, you know that every single week we have a sponsor, and tonight is a very important sponsor. It is the same sponsor every single week. However, it is a very important day today. The sponsor of the podcast is and always will be my beautiful, loving, amazing, incredible wife. She is the sponsor of this podcast, and specifically it is important today because today is our anniversary. Today is our 7-year anniversary. Love you, hon. I'm terrible with numbers. We're lucky, honestly. So we're lucky we honestly remember these things. If it wasn't for things like Facebook or other people messaging us about the anniversary, we usually forget our anniversary. We're just that couple. We don't do big celebrations or anything. But yes, it is my wife and I's anniversary, and she is the sponsor of this podcast. Hun, I love you. Happy anniversary. I know I've said it a couple times today, but I love you. Thank you for being the sponsor of the show. And it is pretty cool that we've been together 7 years. Well, we've been together longer than 7 years, but we've been married 7 years. It honestly doesn't feel like 7 years, but that pandemic section just kind of blurs into itself. So, yeah, crazy. 7 years. Best decision I could have made was asking her to marry me. Took me longer than I probably should have, but that's another story. Love you, hon. So, we have done the sponsor. We've done the news. It is time for the main event. Marcy, thank you. Appreciate it. Let's jump into the main event, folks. The main event of tonight is the comparison between... 3, 2, 1. The main event tonight is the comparison between marketing and wrestling. And you're probably going, Mike, what the hell are you smoking? Why are you doing this as a show? Well, it's honestly an interesting topic. I am a wrestling fan. I've been a wrestling fan since 1997. I have also studied the world of marketing. I have a diploma in marketing. I work in marketing as a day job. I've been working in the marketing field for almost 10 years now. And it is pretty darn obvious after all these years of in the marketing field and all of these years as a wrestling fan, they're pretty similar in the way that they promote themselves and the way that they market themselves. And yes, I do understand that wrestling is a business and they need to market themselves, but businesses take keys from wrestling and use it to market their own products. And we're going to get more into that in the next few minutes. If you are watching this at a later date, we do this every single Monday night, so you should tune in Monday nights, 7 p.m., live on here on the YouTube channel, and you can join the conversation. So when it comes to marketing and wrestling, I've kind of broken this down into 5 sections, and I feel like these are the best ways to explain the comparison between marketing and wrestling. So first, let's start off. We all know what pro wrestling is. 2 guys, 2 girls get together, they have a big wrestling match, and there's a winner, there's championship belts, and all that. The world of marketing is basically taking a brand, taking a product, and trying to deliver it to the masses, delivering it to the audience that wants it. If you've ever seen The Wolf of Wall Street, is a great example of a great marketing movie. There is a key scene that most marketing people know, and probably you know as well, where Leonardo DiCaprio's character holds out a pen and says, "Sell me this pen." And they change what the actual way of doing this is. They do it in a joke form because of a movie. But the best way to sell a pen is not to just sell the pen to everybody. Don't go up to random people and be like, "Do you want a pen? Do you want a pen? Do you want a pen? Do you want a pen?" Doesn't work that way. What you want to do is find out what people in the world want a pen first, and then find out things about them and then try and sell them the pen to people that actually want a pen. Don't just bleh to everybody, because that's the joke, is everyone just thinks we could just sell to everybody. I'm like, no. That's not how marketing works. And in order to sell a product or sell a brand, you can't just sell a pen. Like, I can't, no matter what the product is, if I wanted to sell this podcast, I would not say, this is a podcast, it's on YouTube, it's on every Monday night, it's 7:00, I talk about stuff. No one cares. However, if I do a story about the podcast and I explain, hey, this is a podcast where we talk about different fun things that happen at conventions, like the time where I ran into Ron Perlman while I was just wearing a bathrobe in an elevator. That got your attention. That's storytelling. And guess what wrestling does? Wrestling has storytelling. Just like wrestlers try and build hype with their storylines that include the rivalries, betrayals of each other, underdog arcs, marketing uses narratives to connect emotionally with audiences and make the products memorable. The best example that I've always gone through is Coca-Cola. If Coca-Cola made a commercial that was Coca-Cola is brown and fizzy, you would never see a sale of Coca-Cola again. What they do is they talk about the story of Coca-Cola. There's usually a commercial about your friends on a really hot day like today, and they just need something to cool them down, and they break a Coke, and all the fun begins. That's storytelling, and wrestling does that too. With, stories like Austin versus Rock, McMahon versus Austin, Cody Rhodes finishing the story, the Bloodline story. If it was just matches and not a story, no one would care. Like, there are so many wrestlers in the world, whether it's WWE, whether it's AEW, whether it's New Japan, whether it's AAA, all these wrestlers out there, if they're just doing matches and not doing a storyline, no one cares. No one is going to care because they're not connecting emotionally to the superstars. That is exactly what marketing does. That's what brands do to become big brands. They need to sell you on the story of the brand. Apple shows you the luxury of a brand. They don't just sell you phones. Lexus shows you the luxury. They don't just sell a vehicle. That is one of the biggest things when it comes to brands, is you need to sell the story just like wrestling does. If you bring two wrestlers into a match and they fight, it might be a great match. And if you're a fan of wrestling and the wrestlers and wrestling, you might get into it. But for the mass audience, they need that extra. And I feel like that's something that some promotions and some people who are in charge of wrestling promotions today and in the past have tried to discourage. They try to think, well, people care about wins and losses, and 100% hardcore wrestling fans do care about those things. However, the general public does not care. The general public cares about Stone Cold Steve Austin coming in on a beer truck, punching McMahon, hitting him with a stunner. The Cody Rhodes finishing his story after getting beaten down by the Bloodline. That's what the people care about, not just two wrestlers coming together. And to back that up even more, another thing that is really important is the wrestlers, because similar to brands, each of these characters does have their own branding and do have their own aura of themselves. You could almost compare a lot of these characters to actual brands. Wrestlers succeed with their characters by crafting these giant personas. If you are just a wrestler and not a character, you don't really do anything. If you're let's go with Coca-Cola again. If you're just a soda brand and you're RC Cola. Okay, what is RC Cola? It's just a cola. There's nothing about it. Coca-Cola, there's the Christmas ads with, thinking of the polar bears. You've got the friendship ads in the summer of the really hot day. You've got Pepsi, which is more at one point a younger kids, like a teen more brand, not an adult brand, a nostalgic brand. Wrestlers are the exact same thing. If you don't have a big character, if you don't have something that's larger than just the product itself, you're not going to get anywhere. If the character doesn't get over with the audience, whether it's a brand or it's a wrestler, they're kind of dead. And we've seen that so many times of people coming into wrestling that are, the kings of the indies or the kings of New Japan lately, and they're coming in with all this hoopla, and oh my God, I can't believe they're in WWE, I can't believe they're in AEW, and within 6 weeks, 8 weeks, they fizzle. And no one cares about them anymore because they've not gotten their brand over, their character over. And as I said earlier, some of these characters, some of these wrestlers are brands, and they compare very similar to brands. Austin, if you don't think Austin and Budweiser is the same thing, of course, those are exactly the same type of audience members who are into Austin are into Budweiser. Same with Ric Flair. The people that are in with Ric Flair and love Flair are probably fans that would probably love to be wearing a Rolex because that's Rick. Rick's that, up all night, got the luxury vehicle out with the clubs and having throwing money left, right, and center. That's the Rolex brand. That's Ric Flair. They are together. CM Punk. How many people look like CM Punk? Shop at Hot Topic. It's the same thing. Those are people and brands. And like wrestlers, those brands can change. And those brands can evolve from one to another. They can evolve based on their audience. They can also evolve in the culture. A good one for wrestling is The Undertaker. Undertaker at the beginning, completely quiet, let Paul Bearer talk all the time. Then we get into the late 90s where he starts talking. And then we get into the 2000s where he comes back and he's the American Badass. And then after a few years American Badass, he goes away and he comes back as the Dead Man again. And then later on he becomes the MMA Dead Man where he's the UFC guy. I don't know how the hell they put that up to him, but whatever. And then he goes back to kind of being more the Dead Man and retires, and now he's Mark Calloway. He's just the guy. Brands kind of do the same thing over the years. Brands can change. So for a good example would be Nike. Nike was a brand when it started back in the day that was for everyone. They were making shoes and clothing for the general public. They had tennis players. They had some basketball players, but not a ton. Then they got Jordan, and Jordan kind of blew it up, and every kid in the world wanted their own pair of Jordans. And now, over the years, it's become more of a luxury brand. It's become almost like a Rolex. The price of Nikes are way more expensive than anything else, than any other type of shoe right now. So you can see how brands, while they may have an audience right now and they may have something that is a staple of them right now, they can change, just like Undertaker changed, and just like a Nike or even an Off-Whites that has changed with the culture and has become a luxury brand. Brian said, just coming here to say it was great seeing you at Niagara Falls Comic-Con. You were working Tommy's line on the Saturday or the Power Rangers. Thank you very much. It was good to see you too. I hope you had a good time, and I hope I will see you at a con coming up very soon. So we have storytelling of a product, of a brand. We have the character, and the product is branded properly. That is key. Let's jump into the next thing that'll compare marketing to wrestling. The engagement. The engagement is so important in the world of marketing and almost imperative in the world of professional wrestling. Wrestling thrives on crowd reaction and live feedback. This is something that we knew as wrestling fans was important. We knew that feedback from the crowd live in person was important until we hit the pandemic. And once we hit the pandemic, and if you were not watching wrestling at that time, we could not have live audiences. So we had to do the Thunderdome, which was all TV screens where you could go on camera and be on the Thunderdome. And it sucked to watch live. It sucked for the wrestlers. It was terrible because wrestling feeds on live reactions. And so does marketing. Marketing, you need to have a reaction to your product or your brand. Otherwise, it's going to die. No one's going to care. As we talked about earlier with the Adi Shankar Duke Nukem thing, I totally understand why people may see something that upsets them, may see something that just, why are we talking about this? Like, we should comment on it. We should tell people not to like it. The more you talk about it, the more people are going to see it, because especially here on social media, when it comes to TikTok, when it comes to Facebook, when it comes to Instagram, etc., the more people talk about it, the bigger it becomes, and the more people end up seeing it who may not have seen it before. If you want something to die, if you see something that you do not like and you wish it would stop, don't talk about it. I know it goes against everything you want to do, but you need to stop, because if you keep talking about it and you keep commenting on it, it will feed the algorithm and it will be seen by more people. That's how brands, wrestling, etc. grow, is by people talking about it. You know, if you're a wrestler and you come into the WWE or AEW and you come out with this big pyro and big entrance music, you walk down the ramp and you get into the ring and it's crickets, you're probably not going to have many more matches, because it looks terrible for the brand and it looks terrible for you. And you as a brand will probably die. And that sucks, especially if you're a wrestler. I could see how heartbreaking that would be when you think you've got all this behind you and you walk in and people just go, "Puh," and no one cares. But it happens. And that is exactly the same thing when it comes to brands. If you don't do things online, if you don't post online, if you don't do ad space, if you don't get your word out there and talk to different people in your audience, you're gonna die. Like, that's the world now, especially on social media. It is a world where if you want to grow, you have to be on social media. You have to get your voice out there. And I know this, especially being a cosplayer. If I want to show off my cosplay, if I want my cosplay content to be seen, I need to post more of it. I need to do podcasts. I need to cut these podcasts and put them into their own videos. I need to do shorts. I need to do a whole bunch of different things. That's the best way to get noticed nowadays. And brands know that too. Wrestlers know that too. That is why you're seeing way more wrestlers on social media doing their own things, because if they're quiet, no one knows about them and no one cares. That is the world nowadays, is you have to be on social media. You have to be barking and talking all the time, because that's the only way you're going to get seen. You know, if you post one post a day, if you post once a week even, like I've seen some brands talk about, it's not being seen by anybody, because people aren't going to be watching, and there's always a flood of new content that's coming in, and you're just going to be lost in the shuffle. So with wrestling and with marketing, you need to make sure that the branding and you are being seen by as many people who are going to be influential in buying your product, or as a wrestler, getting your voice out there and seeing more people talk about you online, because that will get more people to know about you. With that attention that you're going to get from social media as a wrestler or as a brand, it is going to drive hype. And that is one of the biggest things in all of marketing and all of brand building and wrestling. You know, promos for your matches are like teasers for the big match. Like, if you just say WrestleMania 40, Cody Rhodes versus Roman Reigns, nothing else. and like it just dies. There's nobody going to stay hyped about that for a very long time. You want to build buzz, and that's the same thing you want to do with a product or a brand, is to keep talking about it, doing teasers, especially for things, the best way to showcase this is movie trailers. Movie trailers are marketing for a brand, and the brand is the movie. That is the final product. If you don't show a trailer, the chances are you're not going to get a lot of people coming to see it in the movies because no one's going to know about it. And I especially say that today because it came out over the weekend that, in case y'all didn't know, Disney or DreamWorks, I think it was DreamWorks, put out a new animated movie this weekend called Elio. Did any of y'all know about this movie? I sure didn't. I didn't know it until I got to the movies to see How to Train Your Dragon, and then I saw pictures for it, and I was like, oh, that's interesting. Not going to see it, but at least I now know it exists. They didn't market this movie properly, and if they did, they may have had more people come and see it. Same with wrestling. If you just book a match or book a pay-per-view and don't promote it and don't build to it, it's going to die. You need to create buzz. You need to bring in anticipation. You need to bring FOMO, fear of missing out is what it's called. You need to build something like that. And, even building a showcase for, the building excitement for things like the Super Bowl commercials. Like, that is the WrestleMania of, advertising, is a Super Bowl commercial. It is the most expensive thing you will ever buy if you're a marketer, because it's like $20 million to get on the Super Bowl. But if you do it right, it is one of the best investments, because it is literally the only time we'll just use America. We won't go into other countries because I don't know if they really care. It's the only time the United States stops what they're doing and watches the commercials. There is no other thing in the world that has people care about the commercials, watch them live, and then share them later to their friends and family. So if you do a bad Super Bowl spot, you blew through $20 million, it doesn't matter. It's the same thing with wrestling. If you book a big main event for WrestleMania and you don't do jack to build that, and it's a crummy match, you wasted your money. That's how these things are so similar. So we've talked about storytelling and how to sell a product. We've talked about character in wrestling, and branding of a character and a product is key. Austin being Budweiser, Ric Flair being Rolex, CM Punk, Hot Topic. We've talked about engagement. We needing to bring engagement and bring people into the world that we're trying to build as a brand, and also in wrestling. If no one knows, no one cares. And hype, making it exciting, making something big, making something you have to see. You can't miss this. And lastly, consistency. This is something that I think a lot of brands have a problem with, and I think wrestling is so good at. Fans will stick with their favorite wrestlers because of their consistent performance and character. And this is something that I feel in wrestling right now is being pushed to a limit that I think is not working as well as they had hoped, but it still kind of works. And that example is John Cena. John Cena has had the consistent brand for the past 20 years of hustle, loyalty, respect. He was the Superman of the WWE. And now, over the past couple months, he has turned heel and he has become a bad guy. However, when you see him in interviews, or you see him at, I believe there was a Fanatics event in New York over the weekend that he attended and was doing goofy, funny stuff, it's inconsistent. He's not just a villain. He's doing interviews as John Cena, the person, not the character. And it's kind of running into a wall with some people, including myself, where I'm like, if you want to be a bad guy, I'm more than happy to take that risk with you and to run that gamut. But you're being inconsistent now. You're a bad guy on TV, but you're a good guy in interviews, but you're funny when you're live. It's not making sense. Steve Austin, from 97 to today, has always been Steve Austin. He's always been that way. He's always been beer swinging, beer drinking, beating the crap at everybody. You know a stunner's coming sooner or later. It's consistent. Undertaker is another version of that, but he has changes. He was the Dead Man, and then he became the American Badass Biker, and then he went back to the Dead Man because it worked better. Brands are the same thing. When you build a brand, you need to build loyalty. This is something that is imperative to a lot of brands because they don't see what their audience sees. They are, as I've said many times to coworkers and anybody who asks, a lot of people are too deep in the forest to see the trees when they work for a company. They see the marketing things all the time because they're either in the marketing department or they just see it because they work for the company. They don't see what the audience sees. And sometimes it's very inconsistent. Is this brand a family brand that, small town brand? Is it, I've seen that more than anything where people are having trouble when they hit that line of being a small local business and now they're getting 5 or 6 locations. Well, now they're becoming more of a province or a statewide brand. And they a little farther, and then you can become an American brand or a chain. A lot of companies have trouble going from one to the other because they want to keep their hometown roots, but it's hard to do when you have 5 or 6 locations that you can't sort of monitor as much as one. And they stumble, and that's usually where they fall. Wrestling's the same thing. If Austin came out and he did a promo, as I'm a hardcore wrestling fan, I still remember, after he won the WWE Championship in 98 at WrestleMania, he came out because Vince McMahon told him he has to be a corporate champion, and he came out in a suit and tie. If he had stuck with that character, he would have been dead because that's not what everyone believes Stone Cold would be. Another example with Steve Austin, when he turned heel in 2001 after WrestleMania 17, McMahon and those fun gimmicks. But during that Austin, it was a different version that no one could really get behind. So a brand and a product need to have that consistent feel. If Coca-Cola wanted to do some, weird side brand of Coke, and like they wanted to, or not, let me take that back. They do that. If they wanted to take the Coca-Cola brand itself and wanted to, I don't know, it's now good for, they turn it into a Red Bull and they're like, it gives you wings or something like that. That's not what Coca-Cola is. A Coca-Cola, like I said, is thinking of nostalgia, the Christmas commercials, or going out with friends and having an ice cold Coke and stuff like that. They have a brand, they have a consistent thing that they have to keep going. If they buy another product or they build another product and they want to do a different type of marketing deployment on that, that's totally understandable. That's no problem. But when you have a brand that's consistent, you need to keep it that way. Otherwise, you're just going to cause confusion in the market. John Cena turning heel, Steve Austin becoming heel. Taker is one that kind of blurs that a little bit and kind of works. But if you're a hardcore wrestling fan, you know that when he sort of became the Dead Man and when he became the American Badass from the Dead Man, you know that around that version of the Ministry Undertaker, it was kind of falling off the rails a little bit, and he needed to do something different. And I think the American Badass was a great way to go. It was more towards the character, and wrestling was starting to go in that more real way, so it worked perfect for him. And that's kind of it, guys. We're going to quickly go over these 5 again, and hopefully you guys understand the comparison between wrestling and marketing is pretty darn similar. So with storytelling, you need to have storytelling in wrestling. You need to have storytelling in your products. If a wrestling storyline like an Austin versus McMahon, Cody finishing his story, the Roman Reigns head of the table storyline, if those were just matches and didn't have story in between them, no one would care. Same with brand. If you don't have a brand, if you just have a Coca-Cola or a Pepsi and you just say it's brown and fizzy, no one cares. It's dead air to them. You need to have something that keeps them into it based off storytelling and making them feel emotions. Character branding is key for both wrestling and wrestling and marketing. You have to have a product that is a character. Budweiser, you can think off the top of your head, the people that drink Budweiser, the people that wear Rolex, the people that shop at Hot Topic, they are a character. CM Punk, Hot Topic, Ric Flair, Rolex, Steve Austin, Budweiser. These are all characters and they have specific branding behind them. If you don't have a specific brand and a character behind that brand, it's going to die. It can evolve, but if it's not consistent, it's going to die. Engagement over everything. You need to be engaged with your brand and with wrestling. If, again, a WWE wrestler comes into the WWE or AEW and they have all this fire and they get to the ring and it's crickets, you're dead. And it's the same with brand marketing. If your brand and you make a product and you put it into market and you've done nothing to bring an audience aware of it, let them know it's coming, get them excited about it, you're going to die. Because if no one knows it's there, no one cares it's there. Similar to that, hype drives attention. You need to bring hype to anything that's happening, especially in wrestling. Like if you think of Austin Rock X17, that My Way Limp Bizkit promo video is one of the first things that pops into your head. WrestleMania 40, Cody finishes the story. If those things didn't happen, if those things weren't hyped and pushed and told that you have to be there to watch these, it would have died. It wouldn't have done as well as it did. Same with products. If you have a product that's launching and you don't talk about it, if you're a movie studio and you don't put marketing into your movie, you will be Elio this past weekend where no one cared and no one knew it was even happening. And lastly, consistency. The consistency of building loyalty for a brand. If you're not consistent in the brand being a certain way, you are in trouble. John Cena, hustle, loyalty, respect, making sure that he is always the Superman of WWE. Now he's heel, but he's not, but he is. Inconsistent. It's kind of floundering with people. Austin, always being Steve Austin. That's why he still gets the reputation that he has and the, explosion pop that he gets when he comes out. You need to do that with your brand. To be fair, Myers Corp Cosplay is a brand. Like Mike Myers, me, this person, I'm not Myers. I am Myers Corp Cosplay, but I'm also not Myers Corp Cosplay. There are things about this brand that I've created for my cosplay and my podcast that I don't talk about. Like there are things in my own personal life that I don't bring up on the podcast. My wife being one of them. I barely talk about her because that's something for me. That's not part of my brand. Same thing. You need to say, if I talked about her, but then didn't talk about her, but did talk about her, but didn't talk about her, that turns into a problem because it's not consistent. Same thing with wrestling. It's got to be consistent. And that's kind of it, folks. That is the comparison between WWE and marketing. It is very similar how both entities need the same things to be successful. It is something that I kind of noticed when I first started in the marketing world, but I'm really noticing it a lot more the more I dive into it. And it's probably part of the reason why I became a marketer and I went towards this as a career, because I've seen it for so many years through the world of wrestling. I always would use a comparison of, people I talked about earlier of if you don't know the brand is there or you don't know the product is there, it's going to die. Wrestling toys are a great example of that. If there is a wrestling figure coming out of somebody that is no longer with the company, it is going to sit there on the peg at the store forever because no one cares, because no one remembers that person because they're not on TV consistently. And even, talking to or reading the Eric Bischoff book of Controversy Creates Cash, there are so many bits of marketing in that of building hype for something having a factor of your product or your brand that is different from everyone else, that makes you different. All these things are about marketing, and wrestling does such a good job of it. And again, that's probably part of the reason why I started to go into marketing, because I've seen it for so many years that I kind of have a background in it before I even started. Folks, I hope you enjoyed this show. If you did, hit that link down below, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. If you're following here on TikTok, hit that follow button, hit that like button, throw some hearts my way. And I hope you guys had fun. Next week, we will be back here, and we're going to be talking about Nickel City Comic Con. I will be there this weekend, Saturday and Sunday only. I will not be there on the Friday. And I'll be working with the celebrities because that's the most fun thing to do. I love working with the celebrities and volunteering. I don't know who I'm working with, but I believe it is down the one wall, just like if you've ever been there before. So I will be in that area all weekend. If you are going to be there, you should stop by, say hi. I will be there, all day. I don't think I'm leaving at any reason. But I greatly appreciate you guys tuning in. I will see you all next week. And stay cool out there. We've been doing this for 50 minutes, and I am sweating up a storm in here. I'm going to go have some relaxing time in the cool downstairs basement. Love you all. Take care. I will see you all very soon. Hey, thanks for watching Monday Night Nerd. If you enjoyed this content, please hit the subscribe button, like this content, and follow on social media for even more nerdy fun. See you soon.